What's happening, my fabulous financiers? You are tuned into another episode of the Do.Different.Better Show, where we break down wealth, wisdom, and money moves for everyday people. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, founder of Social Impact Now and Connect Up Institute, and the managing partner of the Integrated Capital Fund. Today, we're about to bust some myths and open up a whole new pathway for building community and personal power, aka cooperatives, or you may have heard co-ops. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Isn't that just the hippie grocery store where avocados cost $14 and everybody wears socks with sandals? Nah, but today we are going to reclaim what co-ops actually are and why communities of color have been always about that collective life. So we're going to just go ahead and dive right in. So what is a cooperative? At its core, a cooperative is a business or organization that's owned and governed by the people who use it or work in it. That's it. It's an economic and financial structure rooted in shared ownership and democratic control. In a co-op, every member typically gets one vote, no matter how much money you put into it. Power isn't bought, it's earned by participation. That's a radical shift from traditional companies where ownership and decision-making are concentrated at the very top. So let's break it down a little bit further. If you work there and own it, that's a worker co-op, like your local bike shop. If you shop there and own it, it's a consumer co-op. Maybe you're familiar with REI or your local grocery co-op. If you live there and own it, that's a housing co-op. And there are newer ones like Cooperative Community in New West Jackson in Mississippi, and there are some in Minnesota, and there are older ones often you hear about in New York City. If you grow or produce goods and own it with others like you, that's a producer co-op. You may be familiar with Land O'Lakes, that's a producer co-op. No billionaire CEOs, no private equity company or absentee overlords, just people owning together. Here's a quick history lesson. Contrary to popular belief, co-ops aren't actually new, and they're not really as niche as people like to think. They've been around actually for centuries across many different cultures. One of the first co-ops that are typically talked about is the Rochdale Society of Equitable Pioneers in 1844 in England. Poor textile workers couldn't afford the food at an exploitive prices, so they pooled their money together, opened a store, and set rules that became the foundation for modern corporatized co-ops. But let's bring it a little bit closer to home. In the United States, Black communities often use co-ops as survival tools during Reconstruction, Jim Crow, and the Civil Rights era. You may know Fannie Lou Hamer founded the Freedom Farm Cooperative to give Black farmers land, food, and dignity in Mississippi. Latino farm worker communities built agricultural co-ops to help protect labor rights. And immigrant communities created savings club and rotating credit associations and informal lending circles. Basically, co-ops have been co-ops without all the paperwork. Our ancestors didn't call it a co-op. They called it looking out for one another. So co-ops are deeply rooted in the DNA of people of color and immigrant communities, mostly because they had to. And as the saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention. And they needed it to stay alive, and so they had to be strategic. So let me make it 100% plain if I haven't already. Co-ops aren't just for white, liberal, Whole Foods people. It's an ancestral practice that's really grounded in people of color and immigrant communities across the globe. Whether it's African susus or Latino tandas or Asian rotating savings club or Native American communal land systems or our communities have been doing co-ops before they were trendy. So what's changed? Well, they've been professionalized and regulated and let's be honest, corporatized in many places. But the roots are still ours. So now let's bust a few myths about co-ops real quick so that we can move on to getting really clear. Myth number 1, co-ops are just grocery stores. Grocery stores are just one model, and there are co-op real estates, there's co-ops childcare, co-op tech, retail, arts, even healthcare, even cremation services. Myth number 2, co-ops don't make money. Co-ops actually do make money, and they just share the profits differently. Instead of it all going to shareholders, it actually goes back to the members, the staff, or back into the community. Myth number 3, co-ops are messy or inefficient. The truth is some are, but some are plenty traditional. They operate like traditional business. And it's not about the structure, it's about the leadership and the systems that are put in place. And co-ops are evolving with the digital tools and smart governance. Myth number 4, co-ops are only for poor people. That's simply not true. Co-ops are for people who want control. You can be broke or you can be ballin'. It's really about ownership and not necessarily about charity. Although that can be the focus if that's what the members of the co-op choose to do. So let's talk about why it matters. Let's be real. We are living in an era of rising rents, closing of small businesses, especially Black and Brown owned businesses and rural based businesses, as well as an aging population. The exponential rise in pay gaps, investor greed, land loss, and all of it makes it harder for everyday people to survive, let alone own something. And that's where co-ops can come in. Because when you can't access wealth the traditional way, through inherited capital or credit, you have to innovate. And co-ops are innovative. They're economic containers for collective buying power, shared risk, and mutual support, as well as a long-term sustainable way to ownership. They're not just about fighting exploitation. They're about creating an actual alternative to the norm. So let me give a shout out to a few Black and Brown led co-ops that are actually doing amazing work right now. There's Mandela Foods in Oakland, California. There's Shy Fresh Kitchen in Chicago, a worker-owned business run by formerly incarcerated women of color. The Drivers Cooperative in New York City, which is a worker-owned alternative to Uber. And there's CoFed, which is the Cooperative Food Empowerment Directive, empowering young people of color to build food co-ops on college campuses. And there's Vida Verde Women's Co-op, a Brazilian women's services co-op that offers environmentally sound cleaning services. That these are not nonprofits or charity cases. These are businesses with values and with vision. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between a co-op and a traditional business. And we'll do that like a side-by-side comparison. And if you're watching on on YouTube, this might be a little bit complicated because I didn't do a slide for this. But let's talk about the difference between a traditional business and a co-op. First, as it relates to ownership. A traditional business is private or corporate. It's owned by a select few people who will financially benefit. A co-op is owned by the members, the workers, or the consumers. And as it relates to decision making in a private company, it is based on the amount of shares you have or the amount of money that you've invested. In a co-op, one member, one vote. Now, as it relates to profits, in a traditional business, the profits go to the investors. In a co-op, it's shared among the members, and those are decided. How it gets shared is decided in the bylaws or the organizational structure of that co-op. In a traditional business, the goal is to maximize profit. In a co-op, it is to meet the member or community needs. That does not mean that they don't make a profit, but their priority is like, what are the needs of the community or the members? And then finally, in a traditional business, the exit strategy is to sell to the highest bidder. Whereas opposed to a co-op, it's about keeping the assets in the community. And they do that by, one, recruiting more members or transferring membership shares to other members, right, who are in the community. So I'm hoping you're being able to see the difference and being able to see how one can be interpreted as being more extractive while the other one is more regenerative in nature because it stays in the community and you just keep developing membership by widening the pool of community. So why should you care? Well, if you're tired of being locked out of wealth building or don't see a pathway to accessing that, or if you're done watching your community get priced out of the neighborhood, or if you're trying to build something that actually lasts in your community, then you maybe want to start thinking about how you can leverage a cooperative or multiple cooperatives, because this isn't just about an alternative business model. It's about building an alternative future. And it's not quick money. Let me be clear. It's long money. It's community money. It's we all eat kind of energy. Whether you want to join one or start one or invest in one or build one, co-ops are worth really getting your head around and understanding. I know for me, I am actually a member of a few different co-ops. So I am definitely a member. If you're in the St. Paul area, there is the Midway Investment Co-op that is related to buying real estate property and keeping it community owned in the Midway area. And that is also designated as an opportunity zone. It is a divested part of town. My office is centered in the Midway area, which is why it's so important to me. And it's just a really great, tight-knit, not only residential community, but a business community. So if you're interested in being a part of the Midway Investment Co-op, you don't have to necessarily live, work in the area. You can actually be a member from anywhere. However, the priority is given to the people who live and work there. But definitely, if you're thinking about your community, particularly as real estate is rising, I definitely encourage you to seek out and see if there's a local co-op that's already trying to be constructed, or if there is one that exists, and get involved. They're always looking for members. They're always looking for volunteers, even if you're not necessarily interested in being in or investing in the co-op. So definitely check that out. So now I want to just kind of recap what we've talked about. A co-op is a business that's owned and governed by its members. There are a number of different types of co-ops. There are worker, consumer, housing, producer, and more. Co-ops are not just a white people thing. They are deeply rooted in the history of people of color and immigrant communities. They offer a very great alternative to extractive capitalism by sharing ownership and sharing decision making. And they can be very, very powerful tools for community resilience, economic justice, and long-term wealth. In short, co-ops are for us. They've always been, and we maybe have just forgotten, or we have pushed to forget, or we have been lulled into getting onto the grind of the capitalism grind. I'm not saying that is the worst thing that could happen, but I do think, as particularly when you have a community that is continues to be divested, if you have a community that continues to shrink, co-ops offer a nice alternative to a traditional capitalism or corporate model, to be able to make sure that the assets stay in your community, that they are protected, and that they are community driven, that the community or the members are making the decisions that will have the greatest impact on your community. So coming up next in segment 2, we're getting into the different types of co-ops, the good and the bad, and the sometimes messy parts of doing cooperatives. I'm going to break down how they work, who they work for, and what it really takes to be successful. You're listening to the Do Different Better Show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, and we're not just reclaiming wealth, we're reclaiming the ways to build it. So stay with me, and I will see you after the break. Welcome back to the Do Different Better Show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. And in segment 1, we broke down what co-ops really are, why they matter, especially in communities of color, and how they're rooted in resistance and not just idealism. Now in segment 2, we're getting into the real deal of collective ownership, the models, the realities, and the hard truths, and the dope opportunities. Because listen, co-ops aren't just utopias. They are still businesses. They're just run a little bit differently. So first, let's start off with the most common types of co-op models that you'll see out in the world. Each one is built around who owns and benefits from the business. So first we'll talk about worker-owned cooperatives. This one gets a lot of love, and this is for a really good reason. In a worker co-op, the people who work in the business also own the business. That means they vote on leadership, they vote on major decisions, they share in the profits through a concept called patronage or dividends. They help steer the direction of the company. It's democratic, it's transparent, and empowering, especially for workers who have often been left out of traditional ownership. So here are a couple of examples that I hope you go and look up. Shy Fresh Kitchen, which is in Chicago. There's Up and Go, which is they're located in New York City, and they're cleaning services. There's Firestorm Books in Asheville, North Carolina. These businesses often emerge in low-wage sectors like food service, cleaning services, care work like childcare or adult care, where people want dignity alongside their paycheck. Number 2, consumer cooperatives. You've probably heard of this one. In a consumer co-op, the customers or the users own the business. So think of your neighborhood grocery store where the members vote on the board and share in an annual surplus. So let's say there's examples like a natural foods co-op, a child care center co-op. Those are concrete, those are examples. And here are some that you may know about, particularly here in my community in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. There's the Seward Community Co-op, which they have a great restaurant that I absolutely love going to. It's really, really great food. They're located in Minneapolis. There's REI. Yes, the outdoor gear company is technically a consumer co-op. And their credit unions, which are financial services co-ops that service their members. So, what are some of the pros? You get community control, you typically will get product alignment, and you will get, more often than not, very high level transparency. So, what are some of the cons? It can be clunky to manage when membership is large and engagement is low. And you'll see that particularly even in membership organizations, right? Number 3, housing co-ops. So let's talk about one of the most powerful but often overlooked co-op models, and that is housing co-ops. In these, residents collectively own the building or land. Each household usually owns a share and decisions are made together. It's not renting, but it's also not traditional home ownership. It's something in between with community at the center. So here are some examples. There are limited equity co-ops, and these usually fall under affordable housing models. We see this sometimes with senior living facilities. They're often co-ops. Part of that is because at that age in your life, you're not necessarily looking to build equity in a property that you're going to leverage up into something else. You want something that's affordable. You still want some level of ownership and decision making, but you don't necessarily are looking for something that's going to 1x or 2x or 3x in value, right? There's also community land trusts, and we have a few of those here in Minnesota or in the Twin Cities. We've got the Rondo Community Land Trust in St. Paul, and there's the Minneapolis Community Land Trust in Minneapolis. A lot of mobile home parks are co-ops where the residents buy the land together. And there's also vacation co-ops where you are actually everyone who has a share in the co-op. My family has a cabin. It is a part of a co-op where everyone is a shareholder, but you have your particular cabin on the particular resort. So that's another way of a housing co-op that is built for vacation homes or alternative housing. Housing co-ops are one of the best tools to fight displacement, gentrification, and extractive landlords or absentee landlords, especially in rapidly changing neighborhoods or poor and divested neighborhoods. But the challenge often is financing. Traditional mortgages don't always work, and you need a high level of trust and strong governance to make shared living sustainable, right? The fourth one is producer cooperatives. These are co-ops owned by people who make or grow things. Think farmers pooling equipment or marketing power, artisans who share a storefront or split costs. They split costs in indie media making. Forming a publishing co-op is also an opportunity. So you might have seen Organic Valley. They're a massive dairy farmer co-op. There's La Mujer Obrera, a Latino-led textile co-op in Texas. There's artist collectives and craft co-ops as well. But the key here is scale. By working together, producers reduce costs, they increase visibility, and they reach bigger markets. Alone, you're invisible, but together, you can move a lot differently, right? And I talked earlier about the Land O'Lakes agricultural co-op, right? That's a agricultural cooperative of many farmers that pool their dairy to be able to be manufactured and produced and sold, and they get to benefit financially from the reduced expenses that they have for other parts of the business. Next, we have financial co-ops, and these are often credit unions. Yes, even your bank could be a co-op. Credit unions are member-owned financial institutions. They're usually nonprofit, lower fee, and more community-oriented than big banks. I had the distinct pleasure of being part of the founding member and organizers of the credit union, the Black-led credit union in North Minneapolis, called Arise Credit Union, which is already open for depositors. You don't even need to be in Minnesota to be a depositor. So definitely check out Arise Credit Union. And that was such an amazing thing to be a part of, to bring that from idea into fruition. It was a long, worn pathway, especially because as a financial institution, there is still a number of regulatory things that had to be put in place as even as a cooperative, but because it is a financial institution, so some of that process took a little bit longer. But I definitely encourage you to check it out. Arise Credit Union in North Minneapolis. They are accepting depositors, but that was an amazing experience to bring that from concept all the way into fruition. There are a number of Black-owned credit unions, at like Hope Credit Union, the Harbor Bank of Maryland. There are local unions or employer-based credit unions. You might have heard of teachers' credit unions. There's um, what am I trying to think of? I am trying to think of, there are like pipe fitters credit unions. There's electrician credit unions. So if you are in a skilled labor, there's probably a credit union for you, if not by geography, by sector, or by type of job that you do. But here's the downside. The downside is there are limited branches, and sometimes they are slower to innovate. But the upside is very ethical lending, oftentimes better rates, and your money is working in community, not against it. So they have a priority of investing in you as a community member. Typically with credit unions, the membership is determined by is outlined as to who can be a member, but that doesn't mean that you can't necessarily deposit your money into a credit union. But I often find you can have a better relationship with a credit union. But I think some of the access is changing, especially with online banking. A lot of credit unions are stepping into providing more accessibility and services, and I think our lifestyle has changed where we don't necessarily need to go to the bank anymore. You can do a lot of your banking digitally, and a lot of credit unions have now adopted ways to be able to integrate and use online tools, so that even though a credit union might only have 6 branches, you can actually access your money and access services anywhere in the world. So now let's talk about the real life experience of co-ops, because listen, it's not all kumbaya and community hugs. Co-ops are businesses. They have their own set of drama, decisions, and dynamics. So here's the truth. Here are just some of the pros. 1, there's shared ownership, and that means shared power. You don't need to be rich to have a say. Everyone gets a vote no matter what. Number 2, local wealth stays local. Instead of profits leaving the community, they actually circulate back into the community. 3, economic stability. Worker co-ops, for example, have higher survival rates than traditional startups. Why? Because there's shared risk and there's strong buy-in, right? And lots of local community support. Then there's cultural and community alignment. You can build a business around values like sustainability or racial equity or collective care. Next, better jobs. Research shows co-op jobs often have better pay and lower turnover and more satisfaction, which is amazing, right? Because you all are making the decisions of how the worker conditions are going to be. Now, here are some of the cons. Slower decision making. Consensus takes time. I will tell you the Midway investment co-op that I was a part of, it took us over a year to incorporate it. Now, mind you, we weren't meeting every day. We were meeting once a month. And so that in and of itself, people are usually building a co-op while they have other responsibilities, whether it be family or work. So the fact that you have to meet on a regular basis, unless you all live on the same block or work at the same location where maybe you can have a more concentrated amount of time to have meetings to discuss some of the key decision points of the structure of the co-op, it might take you a while. So once again, this isn't going to be something that's going to be get rich quick or move very quickly. But consensus takes time and sometimes a lot of time. And if folks aren't trained or prepared, progress can be stalled. You know, if you've ever worked on a group project, you have that one person who always comes to the group conversation and never seems to have read the material, doesn't seem to be prepared. So you have to create some norms around these are going to be the expectations as we build this co-op. You're going to come on time. You're going to become prepared. You're going to bring the cupcakes, whatever the decisions are that need to be made, that you're actually going to do that. So next, there's a need for education. Democracy only works if members understand the model. This means ongoing training in finance and leadership and governance. It's not a one and done. And you'll have to continue to do that as new members or new workers come in. Next, it can be a little harder to raise capital. Banks and venture capitals often don't get co-ops. You'll need to create creative funding strategies like community shares or patient capital or other types of things. Fortunately, there's actually an organization called Shared Cooperative Capital. They are a cooperative of cooperatives that do lending to cooperatives, right? So they are also located in the Twin Cities, but they work nationwide. So I definitely encourage you to check them out if you're thinking about or needing some financing for your co-op. Next, there are some messy dynamics. Co-ops require emotional intelligence. If people bring unresolved trauma or control issues to the table, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to get real spicy. Next, there's legal and structural complexity. Setting up a co-op involves more paperwork. You are going to need a lawyer, a co-op developer, and time. You may be able to find those resources locally. There are some cooperative associations that can help refer you to services, perhaps locally. Because co-ops are becoming a big trend, there might be some local resources that can help you build your co-op or form your co-op. So I know here in the Twin Cities, we actually have some technical assistance programs that are sponsored by municipalities that are specifically for helping people to put together and form co-ops for a variety of different types of co-ops. But here's some real talk. I'm going to be honest. Co-ops take work, but so do just regular businesses. Businesses take work, but you can't just throw people into a collective ownership and expect it to thrive. Here are some things that you're actually going to need. You're going to need some clear roles. You're going to need some trust building. You're going to need a conflict resolution plan. How are you going to actually manage conflict? You're going to need some ongoing leadership development, and you're going to have some accountability without hierarchy. But with all of that, here's the thing. When it works, it's magical. I love the co-ops that I've been a part of and that I am a part of. They are so resilient and they are so deeply affirming that we are doing some work that's in the community. So let's ask the big questions. Can co-ops build wealth? Short answer, yes, but not always how you think. 2, co-ops may not make you rich overnight. They don't scale like tech startups, but they do build economic stability, income security, asset retention, ownership where there was none, and intergenerational knowledge about community ownership and community development. So, wealth isn't just about cashing out, it's about control. It's about keeping your business, your land, your housing, your dignity in community hands. So while you may not IPO your co-op, you're likely better to sleep at night and know that your community might actually stay your community. So, okay, so let's bring it home. In this segment, we explored the 5 major types of co-op: worker, consumer, housing, producer, financial. The real pros and the real pain points of a collective ownership. We also talked about what it really takes to make co-ops sustainable and how co-ops are less about fast cash and more about long-term community power. Co-ops aren't easy, but no business is, but they are real and they are powerful, and they have been in our communities quietly building this whole entire time. So, coming up next in segment 3, I'm going to share how to find, invest in, and engage with co-ops in your community. Whether you want to support one, join one, or build one, this next part of the roadmap is for you. So stay with me. I will show you how to do different better right after the break. Yeah. Hey, y'all, you're still rocking with the Do Different Better Show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. And so far, we have broken down the why, the what, and the how of cooperatives, what they are, who they serve, and the honest truth about collective ownership. But in this final segment, we are going to get into some real practical and tactical things about co-ops. How do you actually engage with, support, or invest in a co-op? Can it be a real pathway to wealth? And what do you need to watch out for before you actually jump in? So let's get to it. So first, let's talk about how to find a co-op near you. How do you even know where to look for in your community? Most co-ops don't have a neon sign or a splashy ad. They're often super, super low key. They're often underfunded or by word of mouth, but they are there. So here's where you can start looking. Go just start to Google grocery co-ops near me. Check your city for member-owned markets, especially in college town or progressive cities or food deserts. There's usually somebody who might have started to put together something or may have heard something that's going on. And if your local community, if you've got a local community like, we have here, sort of local neighborhood community organizations, they will probably know kind of what's happening in the community and if there's something, if there's a there, right? Now, as it relates to housing, you can start to look at your community trust, community land trust, or affordable housing developers. As it relates to worker co-ops, find cleaning companies, food service businesses, or home care or childcare collectives. For credit unions, that's an easy one. You can go into Google and look for credit unions near me or labor union affiliated credit unions. If you're looking for producer co-ops, you want to talk to farmers or artists or other collectives that are small batch manufacturers. They will probably know of different co-ops that are available. There are also some search tools that you can use. So there's the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives directory, but know that not every co-op is going to be listed there, right? Especially ones that are newly forming. I don't think the Midway Investment Co-op is on the directory, but I know that our local neighborhood association is well aware of us because we work in partnership with our neighborhood association, the Hamlin Midway Neighborhood Association. There's also Democracy at Work Institute. They're based out of the Bay Area. They're amazing. I know those folks over there. I've worked with them a lot in developing co-ops locally here in Minnesota. I definitely encourage you to check them out. There's the Cooperative Economics Alliance of New York City, and there's the Co-op Directory Service. So Don't sleep. Your next favorite business might be already a co-op. So if you're thinking about starting a business and you are really liking a co-op, go and check out and see if there's already somebody who is a part of who's building one, and just join theirs, and you don't have to do it on your own. So here's some ways to engage with a co-op. So maybe you've found a co-op that you're about to like get into it. Here's how you can plug in, whether you're a consumer, you're a professional, or you're aspiring co-owner. First thing, join as a member. In consumer or housing co-ops, membership often means you pay a one-time share or a small monthly fee in exchange for both voting rights, discounts, or dividends, or all three. But most importantly, it gives you a voice in the decision-making of what happens in the co-op. Number two, offer up your skills, especially if you aren't necessarily financially secure. Are you a graphic designer? Are you a CPA? Are you a lawyer? Are you a facilitator? Many co-ops, especially startups, need skilled professionals who get the model and have valuable services. Offering your services, mentorship, or just your ears. Let's say you're really great at strategy. Let's say you're a really great mediator. Whether you're formally trained or not, people always seem to ask for you to come in and mediate situations. Offer those services to the co-op. Number three, invest in community shares. Some co-ops often offer non-voting community shares or direct public offerings. These let you support financially without becoming a full member or having the responsibility of membership. Returns are modest, but the impact is deep. So if you financially can afford it and you really want to support your community, definitely make an investment into a co-op. Just know that as an investment level shareholder, you will not have voting rights, right? But you may, depending on how the co-op was developed, may have some dividends or return on investment. Maybe it's just return of capital, whatever the case may be is, but you can ask. Number four, vote and participate. Don't just join, engage, attend member meetings, ask questions, join committees. Democratic control only works when people actually show up. So don't come to the table if you know that you don't have the time or the energy. And then number five, spread the word. Whether you're looking to be a part of the co-op or not, spread the word about your local co-ops. One of the easiest things you can do is hype the co-ops you love. Tell your friends, share on social media, leave a review, teach your kids. Normalize co-op as a plausible business model. And the more people know about it and talk about it, the more we get to normalize it. So what do you want to do if you want to start or transition a co-op? So if you want to start or convert an existing business to a co-op, you're not alone. I actually have a friend of mine. She sold her business to the employees, which made it a co-op. There are many small business owners who want to exit gracefully or avoid exploitive investors, and they just haven't even thought about selling it to the employees. Maybe you work at a place where you're like, wow, maybe we as employees could own this business. We know the person's about to retire. We know that they want to move out of state. Maybe we should approach them about possibly buying the business. And once again, shared cooperative capital can be a mechanism by which to finance that, especially if you don't have necessarily the credit score or the money to be able to buy. So first things first, if you're thinking about creating a co-op, first you need to figure out what's the model, right? And that might take a lot of conversation. Do you want to be worker owned? Do you want to be consumer owned? Is it a housing? Who will benefit? How is it going to be governed? And how will it be sustained long term? Those take a lot of conversations and probably a lot of research and education, particularly if you are not used to co-ops as a model. Step two, create a business plan. Just because it's a co-op does not mean it doesn't need a business plan. Even co-ops need a business model. You need to determine what will be our revenue streams, how will we govern, and how will decisions be made? How will we operate? Who will manage the operations? And what will be our legal entity structure? Number three, get education and support. Bring in a co-op developer or coach. Like I said, there might be some assistance for you in your local community. I know we have those here in the Twin Cities, but you need to learn about co-op finance. You need to learn about conflict resolution and facilitation, especially if that's not your wheelhouse. Now, this isn't to say that everybody in the co-op should be a facilitator, but you do need to understand some baseline understanding about conflict, how it arises, and how to lessen conflict when it arises, and how to move people to consensus, and how to decouple your personal sort of trauma around conflict and doing a collective business, right? Those two things are different things. And so you want to show up as your best self. I know you do. So you're going to have to get some education and work through some of that. Step 4, incorporate and get financing. So you want to choose your legal structure, whether you're going to be a co-op corp, an LLC, a nonprofit, or a hybrid. And you might want to figure out how you're going to raise capital via your members, via grants or slow money, or using other credit unions or community development financial institutions, also known as CDFIs. Next, you want to onboard and govern. So you need to establish some clear rules, train new members, set up rotating leadership and transparent reporting. All of this takes time, but the result is resilience, values-aligned ownership. And that is so rare, even in the largest of corporations, right? So let's talk about, can co-ops actually build wealth? Now, the million-dollar question is, can we really build wealth through a co-op? The short answer is yes, but it's not fast money. So let's define wealth as more than just cash. Wealth also means a stable job that you own, land that won't be sold out from under you, a business that stays in your neighborhood, a network of support when life happens, intergenerational skills, and not just assets. Co-ops build wealth that's shared, slower, but it is more resilient. They reduce extraction. They grow together. And they're more crisis-proof than solopreneurs or side hustles. But they are not for you if you are looking for a fast return on investment, you're allergic to collaboration, you're bad in conflict, you can't sit through a 2-hour meeting on bylaws. If any of these are true, collective ownership isn't for you. It is deep work, but it really pays off in the collective power. So here are some things that I want you to be careful of, and I'm going to keep it real. Co-ops can go sideways. So here's to watch for before you join or invest. Messy governance. And this is true of any business. If there's no clear process for decision-making or conflict resolution or leadership rotation, run for the hills. Number 2, over promising. If someone says you'll get rich off of a co-op, that's a red flag. Returns are usually slow and steady and community centered. 3, invisible labor. Sometimes women and marginalized folks do all the emotional and facilitation labor without any recognition. Co-ops must actively prevent exploitation within the model. And that's not always easy. Number 4, weak infrastructure. There's no systems. That will definitely mean burnout. Even if collective dreams need Google Drive folders, payroll systems, and onboarding processes. Ask questions, trust your gut, and always, always, always read the bylaws and ask lots of questions if you don't understand. So, where can you go to learn more? Here are some organizations and tools that support co-op learning and development, especially for people of color and immigrant communities. 1, the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives. I've already talked about Democracy at Work. There's also Seed Commons, which is a financial cooperative investing in co-ops. There's also Project Equity. I love the ladies over at Project Equity. They are amazing. They are also based in the Bay Area, but they travel all over. They are great at transitioning businesses into worker co-ops. There's also SELP, which is the Sustainable Economies Law Center. They're also great humans. They provide legal support. There's also Start.coop. And they actually have an accelerator, and I've partnered with them to bring their accelerator program to Minnesota. But so I encourage you to tap into these, and these are not the only ones. There are many others, but co-ops are complex, but you don't have to go alone. So let me give you one final story. In Oakland, a Black and Brown led home healthcare business called Caring Hands Co-op converted a traditional model of business to a worker-owned co-op. And why? Because the owner was getting ready to retire, but didn't want to sell to a corporation, which they were getting many offers. She spent 2 years training her staff, getting legal support, and setting up the financing. So now the staff owns the company. They're earning more. Their clients are happier. And the original founder, She walks with pride and a payout. So even if you're an owner and you're like, I want you to start thinking about and considering what could it look like for you to be able to sell your business to your co-ops. So let's land the plane on this episode. Co-ops are businesses owned by people who use, work in, or depend on them. They are rooted in resistance and community, not corporate greed. They're slower, they're more intentional, but deeply liberating. They are a pathway to shared wealth and not just individual wins. They're not perfect, but they are worth exploring. If you're trying to stay in your neighborhood, own something without going it alone, if you want to exit your business the right way, or just build it in a way that includes your people, then co-ops should be on your radar. So, that was a lot. And that's it for today's show of Do Different Better. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, and we just took a very deep dive into cooperatives as a real, tangible, and radical way to do ownership differently and better. Whether you're starting, you're joining, you're supporting, or just learning, this episode is your invitation to look beyond the hustle and toward a shared wealth model. Subscribe to the show on your favorite platform. Talk to a homie who needs this info, who might be thinking about they want to do something different. And send me your co-op questions. We'll keep the conversation going online on my YouTube channel, Do Different Better. Until next time, keep doing different, keep doing better together.